Highguard.
I am the coming storm.
So, I hate dwelling on things that I don't like. I talk about things I think are cool. That's how I end all of my videos, and how I attempt to approach life. But I can't keep ignoring a pattern. A pattern that feels increasingly inevitable. See, I feel like we're approaching a sort of heat death in popular culture, a slow, self-consuming burn of entropy towards sameness and predictability. It's easy for us to point fingers when something fails, to blame creatives or publishers for tone deafness, laziness, or greed, or to blame the internet, cycles of hype and fatigue, the negativity echo chamber. But this isn't about why any one individual thing was bad where it could have been good. This phenomenon is a result of how we've always created and consumed media in a way that I don't know it's possible to stop. In this inevitable slide, it's dooming things in the past, present, and future towards the ultimate sin. Not of being bad, but way worse. Of being boring. Now, I outlined this video over a month ago. Before Wildlight Games, the studio behind recently published Highguard, announced mass layoffs. Before it was announced that the game would be shuttering on March 12th, 2026, less than 2 months after release. Highguard didn't start this idea spinning in my head at all. It unfortunately just helped confirm it. See, Highguard's situation was predictable. A game developed not by inexperienced nobodies, but by people who made some of the most beloved games of the last decade. A game made for a seemingly non-existent audience, with aesthetics that were almost satirical in their blandness. A game that, by all metrics, was built to be successful, was fun to those who tested it, but instantaneously fell flat in a way almost everyone called before it happened. What is going on here? Well, you don't need to know the details about Highguard to understand what it represents, and, in my opinion, it represents a fundamental misunderstanding of data. See, all successful games are, to some degree, built off of data, what has worked in the past and what hasn't. But reading history and understanding it are two different things, and different still is what you do with that information. Because history on its own, or more specifically lineage, does not matter. As I've mentioned before, we've seen a lot of this recently. Studios created from veteran developers breaking off from the big AAA studio system, a bold choice that I respect. These devs bring with them experience, formulas, they bring data about what people liked about those prior things. But there's a difference between breaking off from the system in order to do something not previously possible within it, and breaking off in order to do the same thing, but better. Not only do these prior things already have an established fan base, but by taking notes too closely, by following the data, you run the huge risk of being perceived as the worst thing possible, a knockoff. And yet, utter originality also does not matter. Something being derivative in no way guarantees its failure, and an idea being unique is no guarantee of it being good. Some things are unique and good, but that's no guarantee of them being successful. Some of the best, most creative games in history are still barely known. So then even the most obvious metric, fun, does not matter. Yeah, no, I'm serious. A game being fun is not enough. Forget how we even quantify what fun is. Tons of games are fun. Millions of them, actually, I'd wager. See, every above metric, experience and lineage, unique, original ideas, fun, they are all, of course, collectively important when you add in the one ingredient that binds them together: identity. And that's where we run into an inherent problem. So what was Highguard? A hero-based, objective 3v3 competitive shooter with a core raid mechanic. Each team attacks or defends the opposing base after a period of preparation and looting. The game worked in every practical sense exactly as it was built to work. And yet, I truly believe Highguard, regardless of its overhyped announcement, regardless of internet backlash, never would have succeeded long-term for two intertwined reasons. Firstly, that it was a game specifically made from and for mass market appeal. There were elements of Rainbow Six Siege or Rust, building up and defending one's base. It had elements of Battle Royale, Apex, or Fortnite, roaming of a large map for weapons and gear and chests, mining and looting of currency and resources. It had elements of the classic tactical shooter Counter-Strike or Valorant, a kit purchasing economy and focus on gun skill, and elements of the hero shooter genre, named characters with abilities on cooldown. And so it was with the game's visual tonal presentation, even its gameplay feel itself. A culmination of the last 10 years of mainstream gaming sci-fi fantasy aesthetics, the shape of a gun from here and a recoil pattern from there, heroic characters pulled out of any ArtStation modeler's portfolio. And with all of this, we see the problem. Because identity means boundaries. Highguard, when playing it, truly reminded me of one of those imagination games you play with your friends in the backyard as a kid. I have a rocket launcher that destroys all armor. No, but my force field blocks all of the damage. No, but I have the magic sword that specifically goes through this force field. It's just everything. Anything. When there's a purposeful why behind every design, the identity of something shines through, even if just subconsciously. And this is something that, as time goes on, I just feel like is increasingly forgotten. So check this out, right? When designing costumes for the Lord of the Rings films, the elves in the introductory sequence were covered in a green leafy spring motif to represent their race being in the spring of their lives, and later in the series they don an autumn-like motif, showing the passage of time and the race's waning youth, power, and influence in Middle-earth. And for years, designers have looked at those visuals and gone, oh, we have some elves in our thing, make them look like Lord of the Rings, without ever asking why. Defenders reinforce walls in Rainbow Six not just because they are defenders, but because the entire game revolves around the mechanics of soft and hard walls. Loot is found in big marked boxes in Apex Legends because the game is a game show in universe, and because of Apex's lightning-fast movement speed. The mechanics, visuals, and fantasy in these cases are all intertwined. And as I was interacting with these mechanics in Highguard, everything clearly from something I knew but so blatantly derivative, as I rode my magic horse all across this huge map towards the actual place where you fought people, I was just asking myself, why? And maybe there was an answer hidden in there somewhere, but I could just never find myself caring enough to find out what it was. But that's not the biggest problem. Highguard wasn't just made for everyone, it needed to be for everyone, or it was dead instantly. And this is where we see the culmination of this entropy. This is the heat death of the gaming industry, of the entertainment industry. Everything burning towards hyper-polarization, not just in how we consume things, but in how they are built, funded. Everything must be the biggest thing of all time, or tiny, niche, limited appeal. And a AAA publisher cannot serve niche, it must be bigger, and to be bigger, it must be general, more acceptable, recognizable. It must cannibalize that which already existed and succeeded, because to do anything else, too risky. These games draw upon the data of prior successes at face value, and in doing so, they inherently fail. The longer this machine of pre-existing ideas recycles over and over, the flatter and more monotonous the voices in conversation become. And the more these bland, high-stakes situations become an inevitability. The obvious niche counterpoint is the independents, but in a world of Fortnite versus Cruelty Squad, McDonald's versus your aunt's homemade pies that she sells at the county fair, the middle of the road is eliminated. As all those beloved semi-niche titles slowly wane from existence, your Killzones, Kanan Lynch's, Army of Two, Ghost Recon, Red Faction, Singularity, Splinter Cell, IPs that do some things with specific brilliance, but maybe aren't the greatest hits of all time. We no longer have room for them in the conversation. And in discourse itself, the middle of the road is eliminated. Everything is best versus worst, a debate, a battle. And it becomes a culture of fear. That my thing isn't number one. Fear that if we don't appease both the hardcore fans and the casual mainstream, we lose. Fear that the good old days I remember are gone. And through this culture of fear, of profit, this cortisol-fueled engine burning with desperate all-in bets, high risk staked on utter risk aversion, we assure that they are. Back in the older Battlefield games, the interplay between vehicle players and their infantry support was the identity of the series. The map's expansive, sprawling sizes played to this. You'd need to take transport vehicles between points, and entire sections of the maps were sprawling fields of nothing. Asymmetrical breathing room between the points of action. These slow moments, that traversal, made the fight over a point that much more intense. But when developing Battlefield 6, action and spectacle was the be-all end-all of design. Maybe they looked at heat maps of the past, at data, and said, here's where the fun takes place. Just get rid of everything else. And by doing so, by making something more bombastic, more accessible and cinematic in the immediate, they fundamentally, purposefully eliminated the identity that made Battlefield what it was. These games don't burn bright and fizzle out because they're terrible. In every way, they are designed to be only the best parts of things that we love. And in that way, in their fear of alienating the mainstream, in their safeness, they become painfully, predictably mediocre. So what is the solution? Well, it's easy to point fingers at the AAAs. In this constant cyclical yearning for profit, this recycling of ideas and personnel starting from zero every couple years. It's easy to point to small indies blowing up massively while big budget productions struggle. Well, tiny projects fail all the time in far greater numbers actually. We just don't notice any of them. It's easy to say, content creators hating on stuff ruins everything, while ignoring the many things that content creators have brought to thriving success they never would have seen otherwise. That it's genre fatigue, while a so-called oversaturated genre sees brand new, huge successes all the time. No, it's easy to blame, to say, this didn't work, do the opposite of that. But I think that's just a misunderstanding of the data. There's no conspiracy, no big bad at the top that you eliminate and suddenly gaming is back. This is entropy. This is what happens when an art form becomes an industry. More content, more profit, more players, more retention. There is a fundamental disconnect between how artistic merit and profitability are measured. Because see, the thing is, someone will try this again. They'll think, we've seen everything that hasn't worked, we understand the trends, we've figured it out this time. Again. And well, we'll see it coming from a mile away. Again. But as consumers, as game developers, I think that what we have is choice. To do something true in the face of profit, to eliminate that fear, to stop always trying to capture some past thing and do something that couldn't have been done before. A core identity that fulfills a unique fantasy nothing else does in quite the same way, and sticking to that vision utterly, no matter if it's up everyone's alley, that's where the breakout hits come from. Maybe the things that we like the most or the things that we create won't ever be the biggest or the most successful, and maybe sometimes they will be. But if I have a choice between creating something inspired by something great or creating something that people will become inspired by, I know which way I'd rather go. I'm Riloe, and I like to talk about stuff that I think is interesting, and I would like to continue to talk about stuff I think is cool. Subscribe if you're new here, and I will talk to you very soon.